afternoon. This is John Broons, the Family Business Guy. Welcome back. I have again with me David Price.
Hi, John.
Hi, David. Really, David is an expert on decision making, so I've invited him along today so we can ask, how do people make decisions?
Well, that's an interesting question, John. Now, in my work, I frequently ask people in all walks of life and in all levels of organisations, whether they're one of the troops or whether they're the CEO, it doesn't make a great deal of difference. But I ask this question: how do you make decisions here? And the answer is nearly always silence, until they then ask me a question and they say, "What do you mean?" And I repeat the question. I say, very simple question: how do you make decisions?
So that's the question I've asked you.
Yes. And so the answer is, they don't know. So even experienced CEOs cannot tell you how they make decisions. Their answer 9 times out of 10 is, well, I just do. But there's so much more to decision making, and many of them do it. They go through it, and I'll tell you what they are in a moment. Many of them actually do go through it, but they don't go through it consciously. And so if you follow my argument for just a second, bear with me, if they don't follow certain steps or do certain things and they get to a decision which they think is, okay, that's the decision, do you think that's probably the best decision?
Personally, I don't think that necessarily is. You want to do some research.
It really is. So let's go through the steps. So first of all, there has to be an issue. Then within that issue, there has to be decisions that are made. So let's just take one. So we've got one decision that needs to be made. Doesn't matter what it is, what I'm talking about will apply to any decision, anywhere, anytime, with anyone. It just doesn't matter. So we've got the issue, we need to make the decision. What do we need to do? What's the first thing we have to do?
See who's involved.
No, that's down the track.
No.
This is a test for you.
I'm not sure I like this test.
Okay, let me give you a hint. What do we need to generate?
Options.
Options, exactly. We need to generate options. Now, most organisations and groups of people making a decision don't generate options because they all run with what they want to do. In other words, they have a decision that they want, purely emotional.
Most people run with preconceived ideas or biases.
Or biases, that's right. So they all come with a bias. So one of the things that a really clever, let's call it a manager or a leader or chairman or whatever, it doesn't matter. What the really clever ones do is they work out, okay, what are the biases that are going to be in the room? Now, the really clever ones will put that on the table because it's the elephant in the room, but it's the elephant in the room that some people don't see. So a really clever leader might say, okay, let's look at what the biases are in the room. There might be a geographical bias, there might be a cultural bias, there might be a gender bias, there might be an age bias, there might be a financial bias. There's dozens of biases that might be in the room. Every one of those is best thought of as a lens on a set of glasses. You know when you go to the optician and they drop in all the different lenses? Well, these are all the biases. So you drop in a different bias, so you end up looking at something and everyone's looking at it through a different lens, except I assume, if I'm a normal person, that the person next to me, that might be you, is looking at it through the same set of lenses as I am. But you're not. You're looking at it through your set of lenses, not my set of lenses.
In every case, the person sitting next to you doesn't look through it the same way.
But they think they do. They think they do.
Okay.
So that's why it's the elephant in the room. So you need to bring it forward. And then with those biases, now you generate options and you evaluate the options. That's the bit that most groups making a decision don't do. They don't evaluate the options. The problem is, it gets even more complicated, and this is why people don't do it. Some options need to be weighted more than other options. So you need to go back to the original purpose. What is the purpose? Let's say this decision essentially is about increasing income. Now, for some people, the income is more important than others, or it's got a higher weighting. So some options will move more towards the income, others might move more towards, let's say, marketing, others might move more towards ease of doing it, others might move towards the resources that are available. And if you consider those all equally, that sounds fair. But the problem is the main issue is increasing income. So those options, the income options, have to have a higher weighting. So it becomes very much a mathematical exercise. So in many cases, even though it's going to be emotional at the end, and I'll explain what I mean by that in just a sec, along the way it's mathematical. It's emotional at the end because at the end of the day, people won't do things they don't like.
There's an interesting thing in there. I heard, or I've read, a quote from General Colin Powell, who ran the US forces in the war in Iraq some years ago. And he talked about decision making. He said that if you have less than 40% of the information available, you can't make a decision that makes sense.
That's right.
He's going out there gathering intelligence. He says, once I have gathered intelligence, I can start to make a decision.
Yes.
Once he gets to about 70%, I think is the number that he quoted, he says, then I can make a decision.
Yep.
But if I wait too much longer than having 80% of the fait accompli comes in.
Yep.
So it's already too late to make the decision
exactly.
for that
so
particular
there's
purpose.
no need to bother. And so what a lot of people do is they procrastinate, and there's a very, very common, perhaps the most common problem that people and groups do is they wait to get more information. We need to get more information. We need to get more information. And if they do, it's not unlike the concept of the perfectionist. The perfectionist never actually gets there because it's never perfect. So you've got to come back a little bit, and this is what the Colin Powell quote is all about. When he's got 70 to 80% of the information, he's got enough to make the decision, and he's got enough to make a good decision, and that's what it's about. If he waits for 100, he's been wiped out, quite likely, or in general business terms, it's too late. The issue's gone, no longer relevant. Time has moved on. So you've got to make sure that you get the information you need. Then you've got to make sure you evaluate that information, but you've got to know what you're going to evaluate it against. Nothing can be evaluated without comparing it. So the keywords are compared to what? You know, this is great, yes, but compared to what? So you have to evaluate with weighting, and then that will nearly always give you your mathematical answer, which some people don't like. Yeah, but we're not into mathematical decision making. Well, you are. Everyone is.
It's difficult in families when we're talking about the individuals within the family.
So I would reflect that back to you, that I agree entirely that in families it's difficult, but in order to move through the difficulty, sometimes you need to objectify it, and objectifying is, let's give it some numbers. Let's put some numbers here and see how they come out, and then as a family, let's see what we think about those numbers.
It's a wonderful way of giving a perspective about making decisions in families.
Absolutely it is.
David, thank you very much for coming along. Thanks very much for listening to David and myself. This is John Broons, the Family Business Guy. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, John Broons, the Family Business Guy. And we'll see you next time.